Hi guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'm going to be reviewing the original 1985 Fright Night. Teenage Charlie Brewster is a horror film junkie, so it's no surprise that, when a reclusive new neighbor named Cherry Dandruff moves next door, Brewster becomes convinced he is a vampire. It's also no surprise when nobody believes him. So this was actually my first time watching this movie, and I'm so happy that one of you guys requested it. Back in a video I made in September saying a channel announcement, and that's where I was saying that I was going to be doing this series, and you guys gave me a bunch of horror movies to pick from. One of you guys said Fright Night, and I'm so happy you did because this is now my favorite vampire movie. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't really seen that many vampire movies that I feel like are that good in my opinion, but when I tell you that I am absolutely in love with this, and I finished the movie and I was just enthralled and I wanted to talk about it with everybody, is an understatement because I really enjoyed this movie. I've always loved vampires and it kind of gives me nostalgia, even though I obviously wasn't born in the 80s and I also didn't watch this movie when I was younger. This is the first time that I've seen it because it kind of reminds me of Goosebumps in a way. It kind of has that really fun vibes that it's still pretty scary, but it's really fun and has funny elements. I grew up on Goosebumps, whether it was the TV show or the books, and my favorites to read were these type of stories that it was like your neighbor next door is some type of monster. I remember reading one where the family next door was a vampire, and there's just a lot of those type of books. Like one of my favorites is The Ghost Next Door. I'm not sure if that's what it was titled, but it was about how the girl thought there was a ghost next door. And going into this and I saw the premise of the movie, I was really excited because I always enjoyed reading those Goosebumps books. And I've got to talk about these characters because man, talk about a movie that has really awesome characters. So first of all, you have the vampire, and he's the best vampire I've ever seen on screen, period. We get this vampire, Cherry Dandruff, and he's played by Sarandon, and he plays him effortlessly and in such a great way because he's seductive, and that obviously plays a big role in the movie if you've seen it, especially him trying to seduce Amy, who is Charlie's girlfriend, and that whole aspect of the movie was fantastic. And he's scary when he needs to be, and I think that that's also a great part of this movie because it's not afraid to be scary. This is said to be a horror comedy, and there were elements of the movie that made me laugh, and like I said before, kind of comes into whole fun aspect of the movie, but it's not afraid to get horror. And I feel like this one really has a great balance between its horror and a comedy, because a lot of horror comedies aim much more at comedy and use horror to be funny, but this one doesn't really do that. It just has a pretty great balance with it. And I think it's a horror movie first, then a comedy, and you definitely see that with the vampire because when he does turn into this really ugly vampire, he's freaky. And this just goes to say again that practical effects are always better, and they're fantastic and they're amazing in this movie, like so good, and I love them so much because it just makes it seem more realistic. And I watched this movie now in 2020 and it's aged beautifully. Nothing looks fake, it just looks fine, and in the future it'll also look fine because they used real things rather than computerized stuff. So Hollywood making horror movies, use less CGI and use practical effects. But yeah, he's an awesome vampire. He has some really awesome scenes, and all due to the director and writer Tom Holland. He does a great job. He's so underrated. I was doing some research on him, and he also directed Child's Play, and he's done other work, and I feel like he's never talked about because now every time you look up Tom Holland comes out, you know, but not the Tom Holland I'm talking about, which is just so funny. But yeah, he's really underrated, and I think he did a phenomenal job directing this because there are a lot of scenes with the vampire, especially like in dark alleyways, that are just beautifully shot. There's a lot of really great zoom-ins and just a really great movie that's also really well written itself because the pacing of it is just fantastic. But before I get too ahead of myself, let me get back to the characters. And then you get Charlie, and he's a great protagonist because from the first moment you get to connect with him because you know that he loves horror movies. It's like, hey, he likes horror movies too, I love horror movies too. Even if you don't like horror movies or they aren't really your thing, you still kind of connect with him because you feel bad for him. You're technically the only person by his side the entire time because you saw the vampires at the same time that he did, because it takes a long time for the others to believe because for the most of the movie they don't believe. And even Peter Vincent, the vampire slayer, he doesn't believe until a very long time, and you're really there by his side the whole time and you feel bad for him And then with the great characters that are built surrounding him, you feel bad for his friends. And also something that I thought was very interesting that they wrote in was that they actually got the vampire to say at the beginning, in one of the earlier confrontations that they have, him and Charlie, they got him to pretty much say, I can leave you alone if you leave me alone. I don't have to kill you, but if you're gonna come after me, then I'm gonna come after you. And I thought that that was very interesting because any character or any person could have easily after that been like, okay, I just will let you do your thing and I'll do my thing. But you get Charlie and he has this really nice morality to him that just wants to help people because he always keeps mentioning all the women that are being killed, the guy next to me is doing it, and he wants to put a stop to this. And I think that's just awesome that they were able to do that with his character. And then you get his girlfriend Amy, and she's also an essential part of the story, and she's kind of more of the innocent one because at the beginning kind of telling him to wait and to like stop having sex, and he's kind of pushing for it. So in a way she also helps him with the whole morality thing. The entire way through you want her to get away from what's happening, and it's a really tense situation. I thought the movie did great with the whole tension aspect. Also her connection with the vampire, fantastic. The scenes where he's like trying to seduce her are so good. That there's like a scene in particular that I think about, the dance club scene is fantastic, and I'll get more into that in just a minute. And then you get Ed, and they call him Evil Ed, and he hates that term because he's bullied, and he's also a big horror fan. And Charlie, the first time this is happening, he kind of just goes to Ed and he's like telling him, hey, can you help me out? And the whole time Ed is kind of a character that doesn't really help his friends. He's just there to maybe be funny in my opinion, and although he does add a lot to it because you see a lot of depth with him, with what ends up happening to him kind of towards the middle of the movie, you end up feeling bad for him. But it's kind of a situation where he kind of brought it up himself because he never believed in vampires and he thought it was a joke the whole time, and then if you see the movie, it didn't work out for him that well. But it's just great. I love the three of them as characters and their friendships and their relationships. And then we have Peter Vincent, another great character. He's this guy on the Fright Night show, and he basically is like a vampire slayer. That's who he's playing. Charlie goes out, seeks him to help him, and this whole time he's like saying, oh, this is just a movie character that I'm playing, it's not that serious. And the way that they get him to believe in the vampire is fantastic, and that's where I think it kind of transitions to act 2. Phenomenal. That he just looks in his little mirror and he doesn't see the reflection is just great. Tom Holland did a great job in picking the exact moment where he finds out that this is a vampire, and the movie just kind of takes a step back and you're like, oh my god. And now we have 2 people believing what the hell is gonna happen next. Like I was saying before, with the nightclub scene is just fantastic, and it kind of ties more into how great this movie is because this is obviously an 80s movie and it has something that almost all 80s movies have, an amazing soundtrack, and it's like a very seductive 80s soundtrack, and it matches the tone of the film, especially the tone of the vampire, and it's just such a nice soundtrack that I love it so much, and it goes so well with that nightclub scene. If you guys haven't seen this movie, just look that scene up on YouTube and then figure out if you want to watch it because you really are gonna want to watch it. And the pacing of this movie is fantastic because it doesn't waste any time. It just starts right off at the beginning. You see them bring in a coffin to the house, and it's just so fantastic that this movie doesn't really pause ever, just is constantly going, and the way the act structure continues is phenomenal. Something else that I really love about this movie are the rules that they have for the vampires. One that I have never actually heard of, but doing some research, it has been in other vampire movies, and maybe I just have missed it in some of the vampire rules, is that it uses the classic rules, and there's this one that I thought was so cool where a vampire can't get into your house unless the owner invites him. It just sets limitations on the story, and it also makes it more tense because since you know the nature of his mother, who's a very friendly person, once they say that rule, you're like, oh, you know, she's probably gonna invite him in, and that's literally what happens right at the beginning of the movie. It's just so awesome from start to finish. This is a fantastic movie, and the third act is even more phenomenal in the way it ends, and especially the arc of all the characters, and especially in my opinion Peter Vincent's whole arc was amazing the whole time. I'm very happy to say that I'm going to give this movie an A+. This is a perfect vampire movie, and it's a great horror movie, and I cannot believe it's taken me this long to watch it, but I'm so happy that I did. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Fright Night, and if you like it and if you don't like it. Thank you guys so much for watching my channel and subscribing and supporting. It really means a lot, and if you're new here, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the post notification bell because it'll notify you every single time that I upload. And as always, please make sure to like and comment on my video because I love hearing what you guys have to say, and I'll make sure to see you guys tomorrow. Bye guys!